All right, welcome back to the Radical Fabulatorium. I'm your host, John Adamian. Next up, I've got my chat with Michael Williams, former MuchMusic VJ, radio host, concert organizer, festival organizer, musician, producer. He does a little bit of everything. So when we first started chatting over Google Meet, the wonderful technology, so maybe the first 30 seconds got cut off, but it just sounded a little strange. So basically all I was doing, though, was kind of fanboying out and thanking Michael for introducing me to so many cool bands as I was doing some research and some homework, getting ready for the conversation. He introduced me, through other interviews I was listening to so many cool bands, starting with the Pointed Sticks, Harmonium, Babe Ruth, Garland Jeffries, Willie Williams, the Dish Rags. Kind of sent me down this whole rabbit hole. So, yeah, when we first started talking, I was just kind of gushing and thanking him because it had been kind of a while. It had been a little while before, since I've done a deep dive on new artists to me. Now, not all these bands were new. Some of them are from the 70s. But it had been a little while before it's been a while since I kind of got addicted to a bunch of new bands all at once. And, you know, he gave me a whole... he's kind of responsible for a whole bunch of them lately. So I really appreciated that. All right, so here we go. My chat with Michael Williams. Enjoy.
Nice to share that, and I'm really glad that you enjoyed that. I'll give you more about the end.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
Because I know, like I said, it sent me down a whole rabbit hole, and then which I really appreciate, and it actually inspired me to kind of make a playlist of local bands here in New Brunswick. So, like the documentary is coming to New Brunswick on October 18th. And like a lot of things kind of skip over St. John, New Brunswick sometimes. So like I know we're all really thankful and pretty excited that you've decided to come. And maybe if you're like DJing a set or something at the show, you'd be able to introduce a bunch of people to.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess yes. I'm not sure if I'm coming in, but the tour. I think the tour is the tour. The tour is coming there. Yes, and I think I may be coming on that too.
Yeah, if you're looking for a reason.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've been to New Brunswick. I remember St. John, and it was a really nice place. I had relatives. I had a brother-in-law who was in the RCMP, and we had to go out to St. Jacques to see him.
Okay.
And it was wonderful. So that took me on a drive through Canada that I hadn't been. And it was just beautiful. I mean, I love the East Coast, and it always has been so much fun for me. So I'm looking forward. I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most is just going across Canada again and saying hello and saying thank you, because people actually went down the rabbit hole and figured it out, got some more music in their soul and in their heart, and and a lot of it was Canadian music and some of it wasn't, but it was music in general, and I'm looking forward to it, man. So I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, we're ready. I mean, I already got my tickets, so I had my tickets before these interviews were lined up. So, like I said, it's always exciting when something decides to come to St. John. So,
cool.
That makes me wonder too. Like, I was wondering if you could talk more about your philosophies of commitment and kind of going, like, the importance of going all in when you decide to work on a project.
Well, it's gosh, I guess that comes from my mother, and so much of what I do and have done, and the philosophy of what I do comes from my family and my mom. My mom said, you can do anything if you apply yourself, wholly and fully. And case in point, I wanted to play basketball. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and all of my friends played basketball and football and stuff like that. And there were things that sort of prohibited me from doing that. But I did. And the first time I played football, I had no instruction. So I actually made a touchdown for the opposing team.
Yeah.
And part of that was due to family situations and stuff like that. But like I say, I had no proper instruction where that instruction should come from. And then I wanted to play basketball, and I wasn't that good. And my mom and dad said, "Oh, you want to do that? Yeah, okay." So that fall, because I went to try out, didn't make it. I was kind of laughed at, and so my dad that fall, my dad put a basketball net regulation height outside, attached to the garage. Gave me a ball, and they said, "Get it, practice," and I did, and I practiced, and I practiced. And one thing about sports I find, especially if you're playing it at home, nobody comes to your yard and beats you because you should know everything about your yard, and you should know everything about every shot because you would have practiced, so you can hit it from wherever if you practice. And I practiced, and I got to the point where I could stand in the street and do like a 30, 40-foot shot or something over the electrical wires, through the electrical wires, and get in all net, because I practiced all winter in the snow, in the rain, in the sleet, and there was a lot of snow, and I'd sometimes have to shovel and go practice, but it was a matter of having that dedication of wanting to do that, and that always come back. You may not get it the first time. Come back again. Come back again. Come back a third time. And that was similar with a lot of jobs that I had as well, that I didn't get at the first shot. Much music wasn't that, but the dedication that I had to my craft, radio, television, wanting to be in media. These are dreams that I had when I was a kid. Eddie Money has a song called "Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star," which is one of my theme songs off his very first album. And the line goes, it's sort of a little break in the song, and he goes, if I worked in the hospital, I'd want to be the doctor.
Yeah.
If I worked in the Army, I'd want to be a general, and if I worked on a garbage truck, I'd want to be the driver. And that was kind of it for me. And it wasn't a matter of ego. It was just a matter of, I got this, I can do this if I applied. Now, to finish the basketball story, that spring or that next fall, when it was time to try out basketball, I had been playing in the gym, and the coach that didn't let me onto the team saw me and said, "You better try out again." I tried out again, and I got that.
Nice.
I got that, and I became good at it because I practiced, because I listened to my mom, and I didn't stop. I didn't quit when I didn't get it the first time, and I didn't get frustrated. I just went back and went back and went back and practiced, and also broke it down in more of a scientific way for my brain, and figured it out for me. And that's what it always was figuring it out for me. And if I did that, then it became more or less a part of me, as opposed to some sort of foreign thing that I had no experience with. And once it became part of me, like music, I could deal with it, and really, MuchMusic gave me the opportunity to take all the areas of music that I worked in. So a lot of people don't know I work in production. I've produced or co-produced the Nylons with my partner, Rad Fab, and we were nominated for a Juno. I just did a while ago, I did 2 tracks with Herb Alpert and Willie Williams, and that just amazing, because I heard the music and I said, something's missing here. Give me 48 hours. And that's what I do. I take 24 to 48 hours and I solve problems through critical thinking, but also through the knowledge that I've gained, or I go in my record collection, I go, and I immediately heard something was missing. What I wanted was that Herb Alpert, he wanted brass down. And I called him, and he liked what we did, and called me back the next day. I was so excited. I got a call from Herb Alpert, and he calls me and says, "Hey, I like the track. What would you like me to do?" And I said, "Mr. Alpert, sir, I can't afford this phone call because he called me on my cell. And at that time, calling long distance on your cell was a fortune.
Yep.
But I'm going to endure here because I got Herb Alpert on the phone, and I explained to him what I wanted him to do on the track. He did it. I had it 2 days later, and it's a beautiful track. I'll send it to you. And it's just never giving up, which is like a real rock and roll theme as well, So, I mean, what rock and roll band didn't get turned away? And then if you got turned away, you never came back, you never did it. It means it never was yours. You got turned away and came back and kept trying to get better at it and make yourself sort of beyond reproach in terms of your craft and your skill and wanting to do that. Need that. If you're going to, boys and girls, if you're going to be in rock and roll, never stop, never quit, never surrender, and always go for the knowledge. Make it a part of yourself. Then it's not a foreign entity. That way, when it becomes part of you, no one can take it away from you.
I completely agree. That's really good advice, especially today where it's so easy for instant gratification and kind of that victimhood mentality can take over a lot of people and they give up really easily.
I find that young people need that. I don't know if it doesn't seem like they're getting it from their schools. It doesn't seem like they're getting it from their parents. But when I was a kid, I got it from my parents. I got it from, there was always one teacher, there was always one teacher. And I gravitated towards those teachers or anyone else that I could learn from. When I was in high school, I worked at 3 radio stations every day, from probably about the age of like about 14 to like when I graduated at 16. I started the radio club at my school, Collinwood High School. And we did the announcements in the morning. But because I did the announcements, I had access to the system and could make a half-an-hour radio show every morning between 8 and 9 when we had to do the announcements. And they gave me that freedom. So it was always coming up with ideas and ways to be creative within the confines of the box and parameters that I was given. And I always had to think in them, around them, and go, how do I still do this, give them what they want, but get what I need and do what I want creative. And it was always about that creative journey to get to where you felt satisfied as well. And also through that, you got to share music, stories, life, all of a sudden, those things like, you're bigger than I am, you're a different color than I am, you don't like this music, you're a different religion. All that stuff just went by the wayside. And it was all just music. And one of the fantastic things that I had was, in the time that I grew up, every kid in my city saw the Cleveland Orchestra at least 2 to 3 times a year.
Nice.
What an inspiration that is, just to exposed to classical music, but up front and personal, where you can touch the instruments and you have those people explaining those instruments and how they play. We had a guy who came to school and we would just sit up around him in the gym, and he pulled out 2 violins. One was more of a violin, one was more of a fiddle. One was a Stradivarius, which is the most expensive instrument on the planet. And he played for us. And he says, listen to this sound. And there was a richness and a royalty and a magic and a artistic sound coming off of this instrument. And then he says, now I'm going to play this other one. And that was more of a fiddle. And he played that, and then the same thing. And he says, do you hear the difference? And we could. And then you would go to the Severance Hall where the orchestra played, and it was in the period of Leonard Bernstein and people's concerts, which you can look up on YouTube. Fantastic. Seiji Ozawa continued that tradition, and so does, and so have Wynton Marsalis. Because when you get young people excited about music, and I got excited about music when I was a kid from this, when you get them excited about music, it doesn't matter whether you're going to be the next Leonard Bernstein or the next Wynton Marsalis, but you have music in your life. What a wonderful thing to turn to in those moments and times of I planned for the wrong reason because my girlfriend left me, or I couldn't get this, or I didn't get that job, or whatever. Oh man, I'm messed up on drugs or drinking or whatever. And those moments where you could leave the planet for not a good reason, and you can turn to music. What a wonderful thing to have.
Absolutely.
What a wonderful thing to have, because that may be the night that you write Stand By Me. That may be the night that you write Paperback Writer. That may be the night that you write She's Gone. If you write that one song for you, who knows? It could take over the world in a matter of time. It could be a great song. It could not be a great song, but it's yours. And it kept you on the planet. And I think that's a very important part of music, too, to give young people something to turn to. And you know what? Pick up that instrument and do something. You know, just pick it up and do something. You got, what are the blues about? That's what the blues is about. You know, the blues is about, hey, man, it ain't a good day. I'm going to sing about it. And there is a whole genre of music that kept people on this planet because they could sing about it. They could feel it in the music, and that was their soul. And everybody had that. So,
well, I think it's important what you say about feelings. You know, like especially today, where music is kind of commoditized. You know, with the algorithms and spewing out the next song that's kind of cookie cutter, one after the other. But really, what you just said about it's all about the feelings, isn't it? It's really about the music evokes emotion. That's really the point of it.
Yes, when you have a great artist, you can, you know, with a great song, wow, it's incredible. And when someone else does that song, I mean, I grew up with all the classic songs from, you know, Hoagie Carmichael and Tin Pan Alley, all the great jazz songs, all the great blues songs. But I learned music from, more or less, from my parents, from the radio. And back then, DJs actually had a choice. And the other part of that Eddie Money song was, he said, when the DJ said there's more music coming your way, I always waited, believed that more music came my way. And I was that kid under the covers with my flashlight, with my comic books and my crystal, listening to hang on, let me send that to voicemail. Listening to the waves of radio coming across, as Garland Jeffries would say, music coming across the color line. You know, so it was like, it was black, it was white, it was whatever it was. I mean, I know songs in the Polish polka catalog, because where I grew up, Big Moose Chola, the guy who has won the polka category for like forever, lived down the road from me, right? And so everybody knew, I don't want her, you can take her, she's too fat for me, the beer barrel polka, all of that sort of stuff. And that was a wonderful cross-cultural thing, because with that came the sauerkraut, came the kielbasi, came the polka dolls, came Moose Cholak, and the wrestler who after every match would say, I'm going down and I'm going to hang out at this hall and come on down and polka with me. And people did. And so, you know, not that I went down in polkas, but I understood it. And I felt it, and it was cross-cultural. It was across those color lines. All of my schools were integrated either by the teachers or by the students. And so I was never alone culturally, and the cultural melting pot and mosaic of America, I lived that. You know, my great-grandma was Native. My grandfather was Cherokee. And I didn't even know that until, I didn't know that in MuchMusic. Because my grandfather died, we found that out. So that was a whole different cultural thing that we could go down. So it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm kind of looking forward to writing about it. I'm working on a book, believe it or not. It's been a while.
I heard you talking about that in a previous interview, and that makes me kind of excited to hear, because like you've got such an eclectic taste. I wanted to ask you, actually, like, why do you think people get stuck in one genre of music, where someone like yourself, you can clearly explain the importance of every genre and how they make you feel? but for some reason some people get stuck. I don't know if it's fear-based. I was kind of wondering what you thought about that.
A lot of it is sort of, but it's not so much fear-based on the part of okay. This is what I was told when I got into radio, and working at 3 radio stations a day, I got to see the creative best that the world had, because the things that the people around me created were so long-lasting. There was a station in Cleveland called WMMS. WMMS was voted the best rock and roll station for at least 40, almost 50 years. And so I got to hear that every day. And that station played everything from the Temptations to Black Sabbath. And Rush, where I come from, we have Rush Day. And when I left high school, the song was, "Hey babe, it's 7:45. I think I'm in the mood." Right? That was our party song. That started the party. So we didn't grow up that way. Gentle Giant was just as important as Duke Ellington. And they shared music. They shared the culture of that music. And radio has always had a difficult time doing that.
So you think it's
okay?
The radio's
and
done it to
I'm
itself.
told, I don't know. Well, radio is sort of like the dog that eats its tail. I was told when I got into radio by my mentor and best friend, Enos Lynn Doyle, the man that spent time with me, and also I spent so much time with him. And doing those 3 radio stations, I would start at school in the morning. Then after basketball practice, I would go to a classical station, and I worked there where I was an editor and an engineer or producer, and I also duplicated shows of that went around the world. So I got to hear all this music as I was editing and stuff, and as I'd be working on it, I'd take all the copies to send around the world, and always a copy for myself. I always wanted to understand something, whether I liked it or not. I wanted to understand why it was classic, why it was good, and people liked it. And then the 3rd radio station, WMCR, which was the predecessor to WMMS. So I had access to radio talent that was unlimited and broadcast talent that was unlimited. So I was extremely lucky. But my mentor, Enos Lynn Doyle, said, "You think that radio stations love music?" He says, "Oh, they love money." And they play the songs so that they can play the commercials between the songs. He said if they could play Mary Had a Little Lamb all day and get a 10 share, that big marketplace 10 share, that they would. And he says they only play the music to play the commercials because the commercials is where they make money. And he said if they could play commercials all day and still get the 10 share and make their money, that would be fine by most of them. They have no allegiance to music. They have an allegiance to money. So like television and radio, we think, oh, yeah, great show, and these people really care. Maybe, maybe not. But the commercials are the almighty entity. And the commercials run the rat around the wheel. So, and also pays for that. So the more popular you are every quarter hour, the more they can charge for advertising. Without that, there is no real radio. You're looking at PBS or something like that. So there was always this sort of this odd altruistic sort of entity to media, where sometimes the actual music and the performance and the performer are part of that lost leader to get to the almighty dollar. And so that's part of it. And then, all of the politics that we see on television and all of the politics that may be in your community, whether it has to do with race or linguistic racism or gender, all of that stuff comes into play, and it actually shouldn't. So a lot of it is based on fear, and a lot of it is based on things that just don't matter, because when a song touches you, Bob Marley's, realize me with music. hit me with music now and it's going to be okay. And that's sort of the way that I always felt. Man, I wanted to, when I got that first Neil Young album, everybody knows that it's Nowhere. When I got Neil Young and Everybody Knows It Was Nowhere, those two records, I was like, every kid in my neighborhood was like, oh, whoa, I got to learn Cinnamon Girl. I got to learn Down by the River. I got to learn these songs because there was just a magic that jumped off the wax. When I got Black Sabbath, the first three records, I was absolutely in heaven and had to learn how to play those songs. There was just something about the music that touched me, that hit me, and I saw it with other kids in my neighborhood, be they black, brown, white, whatever, male, female. There was something that hit us all that we could share that had nothing to do with our parents. And that's what rock and roll did. You should see the Little Richard film. I believe it's called I Am, a film about Little Richard that they did on CNN, and you will understand that rock and roll was Little Richard. Chuck Berry was important. Elvis was never important. But Little Richard, the quasar of rock and roll, the brightest star out there, Little Richard was the most important performer and writer, and he was everything. Richard was black. He was gay. He was incredible as a musician, as a songwriter, and like Ronnie Hawkins, everybody played in his band. Jimi Hendrix played in his band. Who didn't play? The Beatles played in his band. He taught everybody how to play the music that he more or less invented, refined, and reinvented again. Like an Ike Turner, but even more. Little Richard was just magnificent, and people don't know the importance of Little Richard and what they have no clue. And this film shines on it, just like I think this film coming up shines a light on Much Music and what it was to a great extent. And I think this first by Sean Menard, I haven't seen it, but I understand it's really great, and I'm really looking forward to it. And there were others done that from different perspectives, mine or other people that worked at Much Music or other people that look inside this and say, this entertained us for a really long time. This was really friendly to music, unlike radio. There's always a politic with radio in terms why they play something or why they don't. I know because I've worked on the inside at CKGM, at FM, at Chum FM, and seen why they play things and why they don't. There's never a good reason not to play music. There is never a good reason. So I think that it's going to be an interesting thing.
Absolutely. And when you came to Much Music, you were already like a veteran of presenting music of different genres. So, I mean, Much Music kind of filled that gap, right? You had the freedom to kind of show your personality and yourself in the selection of music you were displaying.
Well, I always do that, whether I'm allowed to or not. You got me. I'm going to go into this, find out what you want me to do, and then you're going to find out what I want to do. And I'm going to make sure that those two things line up so that it can seamlessly happen. And it was a matter of knowledge. Some people were broadcasters, like J.D. Roberts and myself. I'm also a performer and a musician and a journalist. So I brought all of that to the table. I have a degree in communications from Loyola at the time, Concordia now, from communication studies. And I worked, like I said, I worked in media from, I started writing in elementary school. I started radio in junior high school and high school. And I also DJ'd they were called sock hops then, whatever, and I programmed all sorts of music at school, bands and stuff, in university. So when I got to, I membered up with people where I was a performer and performed around the world. So everything that was a part of me to a great extent. Was a live thing or a real thing or whatever, and I got to bring all that experience to Much Music and to use that in my presentation And so when Foreigner comes, I'm quite familiar that Nick Jones was a member of Spooky Tooth and worked with Johnny Holiday in France, where he really developed his style of playing and his style of songwriting. And that was great to talk to him about. And because of that, Foreigner came in, I asked him to play live. And when they played live, and we had done the whole piece on Much Music, which was originally done at 99 Queen, he looked at the piece and said, I really like that. Take that tape. I'd like to get a copy of that tape and send it to MTV to show them what we think we should do on our live acoustic show with them. Do you mind? Absolutely not. And so it was great. And to have a crew, like when I joined Much Music, I was told 3 things. We have no money. We have tape and we have airtime. And it's the best out of those things. And absolutely did. Much Music was the best training in television I could possibly get, like WMMS and WNCR, CKLW, WABQ, WJMO, all of those stations were the best training in radio, because the radio guys were magnificent. And when I got to Much Music and they gave me the parameters, oh man, I'm going, yeah, this is great, because once they know that you love the job so much that you would do it for free, they got you. But also the job has got you too. And without that restriction of, I got to make this, I got to do this, you're going for what feels good and what's in front of you, what you can make of it. And they let me make magic. And I will be ever grateful for that, because I got to present music to a nation. Also, I think that I helped, and Much Music helped, obviously, to change the face, the color, the gender, and the sound of music on the radio, and that was really important, because we opened it up to a big extent. And without Much Music, it's kind of closed down a little bit, but hey, there's a lot of things on the radio now that weren't before. And unfortunately, radio is just not as adventurous as we could be. And it could be, but we had power to, when I walked in one day, every day I'd go into the music library and I find something new and interesting. And one day I walk in, there's a girl who lived around the corner from my parents, and she had a new record out. And I heard it, and the song was called Fast Car, and that was Tracy Chapman. And I remember playing that for the very first time before anybody had seen it or before it came a hit. Now I go into the library and I listen, wow, this is great. I got to play this. Played it. Next thing you know, later, I had the freedom to do that. And even when I didn't have the freedom to do that, I would figure out how to do it. So I designed Soul in the City. So it was originally a radio show in Montreal on CKGM called Club 980. The Soul of the City was the show that's the show that I developed from a kid listening to the radio in my bedroom to whenever. That was the way that I related to music. And so it's multi-genre. It was that there were no restrictions in my music canon catalog. And that's what Much Music allowed me to develop on Soul in the City, Rap City, Power Hour, Soft and Romantic, and any other show that I could or would do. And it let me bring my whatever it is, be it magic, feeling, or consciousness to it. And I had crew and people helped me on that journey so that I could do what I want, but also they were translated into television and bang. Because radio is a solitary thing. I would go into a room and I would just combust, just me and my records. And that's what I loved about radio. And that's why radio will always be the best job I've ever had, because it was just me. Television, you got 30 people before that signal gets to you in New Brunswick, or to you in Vancouver, or to you in LA. And people have to sort of work like a robot or a machine in unison to make that happen. That's so doing in that process, You have to push it through the machine, and if it gets to the same thing on the other side, you're quite lucky. And I was quite lucky, and we've all loved MuchMusic, no matter who it was, Erica or JD or Rick the Temp or anyone had been on the air. They had these certain goals. People just wanted to do the job and introduce shows and become something else and all of that. I don't know what happened at MuchMusic once passed, but when I was there, yeah, I ruled my roost, and I had certain things that I wanted to do and certain communications that I wanted, and I wanted those waves across the color line. I didn't want any barriers to people accepting not only each other, but music as well. And to me, music was the weapon, the tool that I used to do that. And when I came to Canada, when I came to Canada in 1972, 73, around that time, I visited in 72 to go to Loyola and check out the school because Marshall McLuhan was going to be the head of the department, the communications department, before he passed. He passed, but I said, wow, if he was going to work there, then it must be a pretty cool school. Came back in 73 to start school in January, but in 72 when I was there, I'm in Montreal for not an hour. And I go with friends downtown that evening and go to we want to go to 4 or 5 clubs. 4 or 5 clubs would not let me in because of the color of my skin.
Wow, yeah.
And so I thought that was very odd. And I said, I have to do something about this.
Yep.
This was kind of odd. And I kind of swore to myself under my breath that someday those places would actually pay me to come in, let me come in, and let people let me come in, because what am I going to do? I don't know, but I'm going to do what I do, and I do music. Now, the 5th or 6th club, one of them, it was called the Lorelei, and I walked in because I was kind of like, I don't know whether I should stay here because this is kind of funky, But that last club that let me in, I walked in and I found people. There was a drag show on stage. There was a tune by my mentor, Gil Scott Heron, blaring at earbleed volume, my favorite song of the day. And everybody was loving and enjoying the music. It was gay. It was straight. It was strange. Dope game smoke. There were people on roller skates. It looked like a rock and roll circus or a disco circus that I had never seen all in one place, happening place with a horsehair floor, so your legs don't get tired and you want to dance all night, like the Foundation horses, don't they? And it was just that last place is what kept me in Canada and kept me in Montreal, because it was sort of like, maybe the other places were stupid. We'll take care of that too on the process, of going to wherever we're going and be whatever we're going to be. But and so by the time I left Montreal, I didn't have to pay to go into anywhere. I was part of the fabric of the music there and the music industry. And Celine Dion and I sort of used to grow. We would run to each other in her office in old Montreal. And the last time, years ago, before MuchMusic and while I was at Showm FM, we'd wind up dancing till 4 o'clock in the morning to AC/DC in her office. And so it was just, Montreal turned out to be the most wonderful place. And like I say, Babe Ruth was a hit in Cleveland. Babe Ruth was a hit in Montreal. And so the music from Cleveland to Montreal was quite similar, quite eclectic, and quite wonderful. And so the things that we loved, be it Weather Report or Chick Corea and Return to Forever, they loved. Whether it was Gentle Giant or Genesis, Pink Floyd, they loved. And we had loved it in Cleveland. I worked the Dark Side of the Moon tour in Cleveland, and it was fantastic. And I go to Montreal, and they lived for this stuff. So all the negative, there was so much positive. I had to stay. And staying in Canada was one of the best decisions that I made, because there are times when you can always go to Los Angeles or New York, and I went to those places, and I lived in New York with my dad. I lived in L.A. with my mom. she worked there, and but I came back to Cleveland always, and it was just like a musical touchstone for me. And then Montreal became the same thing. It became magic through music, and that all led to MuchMusic and sharing not only my knowledge but my feelings. And I had traveled across Canada. I worked with a group called the Pointed Sticks. Their album Perfect Youth was the very first album that Bob Rock, full album that Bob Rock produced. Now,
Awesome album.
Bob Rock is, and Bob Rock has done Metallica, Enter Sandman, all of that stuff. Well, his very first band was a band from Vancouver, and actually the Payolas were their opening band. Okay, they opened for the Pointed Sticks, and they launched the Perfect Youth album. And I was blessed to have been working with them. And the magic for me, too, was long before MuchMusic, I did lasers and worked on the road. And after I had done a laser show with Triumph, and I was on my way to doing a laser show with Rush, I went to Vancouver. I walked the last day in Vancouver. I walked into a record store on West 4th called Quintessence Records, called Zulu Records. I walked into that store like Phantasmagoria in Montreal. There was a whole wall of just local music. And I went down that rabbit hole immediately, because back then we could listen to records in the store on headphones, which was great. And I listened to everything, and I said, this is great. Who owns this store? Oh, he's upstairs, Ted Thomas. I'm not to see him. I go up and see him. When I left his office, he gave me all the product, and he said, look, we have to promote this, which was the Pointed Stick album, and it hadn't come out yet. He says, I want you to listen to this, and then tell me what you think. And we have to promote this across Canada. Can you do it? Yeah, of course I can do this, but let me listen to the product. And I had a little tape machine before all of the other tape machines, Walkmans and stuff. And I had a little dubbing deck, and I had a big phone. And I'm on the plane. At that point, I didn't know about these things. It wasn't as electronic as the stuff that we have now. So I could listen to the whole thing. And I believe when I left the record store, I landed from Vancouver to Montreal. I immediately went across. I got off the plane, called them, and I said, I love it. And they said, we're sending you a ticket. I had a job. Nice. The job was not predicated on the color of my skin, but the knowledge in my brain and the passion in my heart for the music. And that's what's gotten me through life.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I feel like a lot of people are like, when I think about, I kind of wonder if people are forgetting that they should be inspiring people or inspiring the next generation. Maybe they're thinking they need to be.
Sometimes I think they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think they more exploit them than inspire them. Not my thing. My thing is music education, be it formally in a school or out on the road and playing. I've met a lot of musicians. I work with young musicians. One of them has just written a couple songs for John Legend, and he's on the road. I've been working with him since the age of 10. And giving him things to listen to and inspiring him that way. And this kid comes in, I get a call from someone that says, my son really likes music and stuff like that. He's 10. And I'm talking to the kid. The kid at 10 knew Parliament Funkadelic Maggot Brain, which is the quintessential post-Hendrix Black Guitar Solo. It's about 10 minutes of just absolute magic. And not only did the kid know the song because he had discovered it, play it. I said, I got to work with this kid. And it's TJ Whitlaw, and he's only a guitar player, but he's a great songwriter, and he now has a song on the he has one song, I think, on the brand new John Legend album. He worked with JP Sax and a lot of other folks, and he's played with Babyface. And it's about, if you can't inspire the next generation, then what the hell are you doing? Yeah. And musicians need fellowship, and they need the culture of music, and that needs to be shared from great musicians to young musicians who want to be great, but also want to play the music properly. And one artist you should look at is Jordan John. He is incredible. His father, Prakash, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 5 times.
Wow.
He played with Lou Reed, Alice Cooper, Chris Brown, Parliament, Funkadelic, George Clinton, and that's just where he starts. Mm-hmm. And he's a wonderful cultural exercise because he's a kid that came from Mumbai. Came to Canada, heard black music and went, holy shit, what's this? Mm-hmm. And it just grabbed him by the throat. And by the time he was done, he not only played with all these people, but he inspired folks. Mm-hmm. And the best story I have about those two individuals is that they were playing in Yorkville in Toronto, the small club, about 50 people. Fred heard about it when he was living in Toronto. He heard and he knew who Prakash John was from the Rock and Roll Animal album with Lou Reed. His band was mostly Canadian, that Prakash put together. And when I heard that Rock and Roll album, that Rock and Roll Animal album, kind of changed my life and concepts of music that I had, because the band did something that was just, it took Sweet Jane and just made it into an epic opus mini symphony. And I'm sure Prince would have been affected by that record. I know I heavily was. Mm-hmm. And Prince heard he was playing in town. Prince goes down to that little place in Yorkville, sees them playing. I think 2 of them. And Prakash on bass, Jordan on vocals and guitar, Prakash on vocals with him, and the place would have been packed, as it always was. Prince stayed for about 5 minutes, got back in his limo, went home, picked up his guitar, came back, pulled up a chair, opened his guitar case, plugged in, played for 3 hours with them, did not sing, did not do anything but play with them. And at the end of it, they didn't speak much. You know, I'm sure they laughed. They didn't speak much, but they played for 3 hours.
Wow.
Right? He put his guitar back in after that. Prakash never sees or hear from it. Next thing you know, he's doing his last tour, the microphone, the piano and mic tour, where he passed away. Mm-hmm. Well, at the beginning of that tour, Prakash gets a call out of the blue. It's Prince. I love your sound that you had in that place, and I want you to come out and recreate that sound for me in the controls I'm going to. So I'm going to play, and I want you to walk around the room, and I want you to fine-tune my sound with me. He came, he did that for the first 3 or 4 days, and then he had to come home. And that is, that is the culture of music. That's the magic of music. That's the beauty of music. And, this is a guy from Mumbai with a guy from Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And the only culture that they know and share is the culture of music. And that's what I think MuchMusic did, was that we inspired a lot of people. Velvet Underground, Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, they only sold maybe 50,000 records if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. 20,000, 10 or 15,000 at the time. But all of those 20,000, those 10, 15,000, all of those people started dance. All of those people were inspired by those records. Absolutely. It's like listening to Miles Davis or listening to John Coltrane. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't inspire you to at least listen, then there's a problem. And there's so much great music. And the cool thing about MuchMusic is that I can have Terrence Blanchard on my show on Soul in the City, or just come in and play. My very first day of music was captured, and this was sort of the largesse or the depth of music that I wanted to work in. Mm-hmm. My very first day, I walked in, I hadn't been there for 10 minutes. I walked in, I interviewed Run DMC, whom I had been familiar with because my radio show in Montreal, Club 980 Soul in the City, was killing their first record. Mm-hmm. We just killed it. It was a hit, rock box, and it's like that, and everything else on that record was a hit in Montreal because I was the only person in the country playing that record. So I was familiar with them. I would have talked to them. They had been to Montreal, and I walked in, interviewed them. It was beautiful. It was great, and it was pretty seamless. This is my first day. This is my tryout. Mm-hmm. Right after we finished with them. We're just sort of standing there talking. Lou Reed comes in. Lou Reed, the Lou Reed from Velvet Underground, was not having a good day. And his best friend was a friend of mine. And I said to him, how is Garland? And he looks at me and says, you know Garland Jeffries? I said, absolutely. My very first interview in New York City was with Garland Jeffries when I was in university. I flew and did that and came back. And he said, well, you know Garland? I said, yeah. All of a sudden, that scowl on his face melted. And he was a whole different Lou Reed. He was a friendly Lou Reed. If you listen to the music and look at the album covers, you're thinking, this guy's got a switchblade and he's going to stab me if I don't do this properly. Yep. And he was magnificent. And then I turned to him and I said, Run DMC was still there. I said, you guys know each other? No. I said, Run DMC, Kings of Rock, the MC Higher, and that record hadn't even come out yet. The Run DMC, you know, from Queens. This is Lou Reed from Man, you know, and I introduced them for the very first time, and they lived in the same city and didn't know each other. Yeah. That was the magic of MuchMusic to me, and that was the magic of what I wanted to do, and that was the magic that made me want to work there, because all the people around me facilitated that. All I had to do was do it, and have a mind to do it, and anything I wanted to do, I could pretty much do and have him to do, as long as I harm no animals in the process. It was a good thing to do, and that's what the audience got. And I hope all of that is on film, and I hope people remember. But I just want to say thank you to Canada. So I'm working on a tour to do that outside of this, and it starts with this. So I'm going across the country with the film, and I'm ever so excited to see the audience again. And we'll be back a couple more times before it's all over for me. But it's a great thing to have been able to share music. And unfortunately, there's nothing like that now. No. Because, you know, by talking to you, see that there is no now a lot of people and a lot of adults wish you have influencers now, you know, stuff like that. But you have a lot of things that people follow other than Howard Stern, you know, and he has the power to do whatever he would like to do. And I think he's even gotten better. You know, before I wouldn't listen too much. Now I do. He's got Springsteen on there and stuff, and he's gotten incredibly, because he has the freedom and the power to do what every DJ would have wanted to do. And I was, just have artists, great artists on your show, coming and performing live and talking and sharing their experience with the audience and with you, and sharing that knowledge. No gossip questions, no BS, no who you sleeping with and all that kind of stuff. That was never the interest for me, the gossip and all that. No, I don't do that. You've never seen me do that. But in terms of music, I go along far and wide, man. And so that goes back to the beginning, where I get to share my knowledge, my creativity, my culture, and I also share in yours, and I learn. So it's a learning process back and forth. You don't have that a lot now. No. You have a lot of stuff being pushed at you, right? But not a lot of stuff being, one way. And interactive is no longer interactive. Interactive is, how can we make money on this? You know, that's sort of what it is. And MuchMusic definitely wasn't about the money, because, like I said, we didn't have any. But it began to make money. And, you know, God bless Moses, Nancy Oliver, who's there at the beginning with John Martin, who is no longer with us, unfortunately. John Martin and Nancy, they helmed the show called MuchMusic, which eventually and became MuchMusic, and Christopher Ward with City Limits. That was also a big part of MuchMusic. Then later it was me with Soul in the City, which actually encompassed Rap City, and they were all sort of in the same show. and that was the radio show that I had done, and the idea of putting it on television and seeing what it looked like as a television show. Then we put them as separate shows. There was Rap City, there was Soul in the City, Rap City, the Power Hour, for the 3 most successful shows in the history of Much Music until it finished. So I was very happy about that. And I wrote The Electric Circus and co-hosted that with Monica Diol. And then I left that show, and then she changed it and made it more into what she wanted it to be. But I eventually wrote the pilot and hosted the show for quite a while with her, then handed it over to her, and it took on a life of itself for dance music. So any type of music that you were into, you could find on Much Music, even country, obviously, was a big part of things too. I was always a country fan myself, did Reba McEntire, Randy Travis, all of that. But you could find those little places that you wanted to go for the things that you knew and enrich your knowledge and take to the next level of that. But you could sit there and explore stuff that you didn't know. And that was and it was quite passive. And we'd say, this is it. Let me explain it to you, and you can make the decisions. But hey, here's the music. And it was better than radio. It was always better than radio, because the breadth of music, the distance, the width of music, the bandwidth of the music was so huge that radio would just radio. Oh my God, you're playing that?
Yep.
Yeah, we're playing Fish Heads by that Vancouver band. Once again, we're going to play. We're going to play DOA. We're going to play whatever. And
Morbid
if you
Angel.
can make it to, yeah. If you can make it to music with your video, you knew we were going to play it. That was guaranteed. So just to sit down and talk to you, and to be able to face on, and I hate the word branding, but to put a face on, it was an honor to be allowed to, expected to, and to put a face on Canadian music. To put names and faces to the music, and also to recreate it past Canadian content, and to share that with Canada and Canadian musicians, and be able to give them a form to put their music out there and it was magnificent. And I think musically we changed the world, because we gave Canadian musicians a platform that they never had at radio. And by their having their success, that changed the world, which led to things like, So I think it was very important to give the musicians the hope that they could, and they always jumped to the mark. And it was a beautiful thing. It was a very beautiful thing. Looking forward to the film, and I'm looking forward to being out there.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's nice to hear you. It's nice to hear you mention so much about the music, because I've interviewed a handful of people for this documentary and just in general. And there's not a lot of people who are offering musical suggestions, but kind of like what I mentioned at the beginning, like you've given me a dozen bands that have, like I've listened to them and they've spoke to me. It kind of makes me wish like you could come in when you come to St. John, if you could take over our college radio station and just kind of DJ for the day and be like, here everyone, here's an education in all these bands.
Dude, well, I mean, I don't know what time I get there or whatever, but there's no flies to me. That sounds like fun. I would love to do that everywhere. I mean, I would take over any radio station that would let me take it over in the time that I have. And if the time isn't enough, dude, I can do it remotely, or I can, if there's a to come back and do that, I'd do it. Yeah, I would do it hands down, absolutely. And, and just share that. Absolutely. I can go and play what I want. That's the whole thing.
Absolutely.
I don't do video unless I can play what I want or what I feel I need to play for the audience that I'm playing it for. I also DJ in clubs and stuff like that. I'm opening act for the Spoons and different acts. I go out and DJ with them. And I also go out and perform with them on occasions too. Witches in Vogue, the Spoons, HP Concept, Poison, Bret Michaels and Poison. I sang with them. And most people don't know that I'm a musician or that I even can perform. So they're quite surprised when I do. So if you work it out at the College Station, man, we can see what time I come in and stuff like that. I do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it would be really inspiring. I know. I mean, it's a little selfish on my end because, like I said, I've got a couple weeks here worth of music to dive in on my own personal adventure. But I figure if it speaks to me, it's probably going to speak to a lot of folks. So it's great hearing. Hearing that passion.
You know what? It's hearing it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a song by Pharoah Sanders called Astral Traveling off the album Timby. And that song was recreated by Santana, Caravan Mirage, and he gave it a different name, but it's a song. So he was inspired by that. Pink Floyd was inspired by Miles Davis' Kinda Blue, a song called Blue Green, I believe. And so there was all these wonderful connections of music that people don't know. They're more interested in profit that they gain from separation than the knowledge that they gain from coming together. So if we can come together with music, I'm with it. Whether I have to send you a show, that's a 2 to 3 to whatever, but I'd love to be there and do it live on the radio. Absolutely. And maybe we can figure something out, you know? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're always looking for shows to syndicate anyway. So like overnight or something like that, we're always looking for stuff.
Overnight is the perfect place to be, man. That's where I started out on Showmet overnight and playing requests and stuff. It's a beautiful thing. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. So you've got what you should do then is send me, write down this. Let me give you my email.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, and I'll edit this out of the... I'll edit this.
Do you have my email? Did they give you my email?
No, I've just been talking to Eric through his email.
Okay, so what you do is you get my information from Eric, send him a copy of this, get information from Eric. This way I don't put email and on there. And the information from Eric, and let's stay in touch. You can always hit me up at Facebook as well. Instagram, I don't look at it. I've got that. And let's see what we can do about a radio show. I'll definitely come in. I definitely, hands down. All I need is the time, and we'll figure it out. Okay?
Yeah. And
all right, man.
That'd be perfect. I'll send you a compilation. I made a little playlist of New Brunswick artists, too. I'd love to get your feedback on some of because the local scene's kind of bubbling up. It's a pretty exciting time right now in St. John, so...
Well, and so it should be, and so it should be, I'm looking forward because I haven't heard a lot of artists from New Brunswick over the last few years because I haven't been out there. I've been mostly out west, and there's one artist out west you should check out. She's like a Buffy St. Marie sort of type artist. She's indigenous. Her name is Violet Wolf.
Violet Wolf. Okay.
Violet Wolf. I was very excited by what I heard from her, and then there's another group, Skylab Sounds, out in BC on Vancouver Island. They used to be called Greenlaw, but they are now called Skylab Sounds with Oz and his wife Skyla, and they're great. HB Concept. Good band to work with out a lot in BC. He's Jimi Hendrix's cousin.
Oh, cool.
And he does all the vocals on the Hendrix tours that the Estates do. And of course, if you've never heard Buddy Miles do Down by the River by Neil Young, you should have that experience. 2 versions on the album, Them Changes, with Walter Rossi, Montreal guitar player who passed away, who was brilliant, and go to the Buddy Miles live album as well and check out Down by the River. Buddy Miles was one of the most important drummers in music, and he never gets his due, and he finished his career recording in Canada with Bobby Curtola, no less. And so that's a good place to start, man. And I think you will enjoy that. And I will also, I'll get your information from Eric. Make sure that you give it to him, and I'll send you the Herb Alpert tracks.
Yes.
Actually, if you go to iTunes, the artist is called Willie Williams. and the record is called Reggae Can't Done. And on that album, there's 3 tracks. There's 2 tracks, one track called One More Step or One More, that features Herb Alpert. And then at the end of the album, there's a track called Stepping, which is the instrumental dub version of that, which again features Herb Alpert. Oh. And there's another track on it called Back Way, W-E-H. That's that festival too. And the new album from Jason Wilson, everything from Jason Wilson is just great. But he has a new album, Jason Wilson and Shara, and that's just coming out next week. And so that's all Canadian music that people don't know or should know. So you have fun with that, and we will talk again. Make sure, like I say, make sure to get Eric, and I will give him permission to give you my information. No problem. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, man. I'll see you when I get to New Brunswick.
Yeah, we'll be waiting for you. Thanks a lot for your time, Michael. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thank you for the call. Sorry about being late.
All good.
But, better late than never. And I'm glad it was worth it to you. It was definitely worth it. And say hey to everybody in New Brunswick. And if you're in school, stay in school, man. In school, because while you're in school, you can learn so much. It's going to help you, and it's not all in the classes. All right.
I completely agree.
Take good care.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Michael. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.